The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has put out new guidance on AI-assisted inventions, and I want to talk about it. Now, the big thing about this new guidance is the main thing that it changes from the previous guidance. The previous guidance on AI-assisted inventions was ordered by an executive order in February of last year and was officially put out on March 5th of 2024. It's titled Inventorship Guidance for AI-assisted Inventions, if that's something you want to look into. And this new guidance rescinds that and changes it a little bit. The big changes, though, the big change is effectively around something called the PNU factors. I believe I'm pronouncing that properly. I don't know if I am. I'm not a patent lawyer, so I might be saying the words wrong. But it's effectively around the PNU factors. The PNU factors are used to determine whether or not a person significantly contributed to an invention. Basically, whether or not that person actually played a part in the creation of the thing that is being patented. It seems to be, from my understanding, from what it seems to be, is it's basically determining whether or not someone can claim inventorship. So imagine you're in a situation where, like, hey, this person, maybe like you reached out to them, you asked, like, hey, and this is specifically addressed in the PNU factors. You reached out to a person, you said, hey, I'm working on this thing. I don't know the equation to solve this problem, or I don't know the relative density of this chemical, or I don't know how to turn a screw properly. I don't know. I did a wrench and I said screw. How to turn a screw properly, and that person tells you how. Did that person play a part, a significant contribution in the invention of the thing that you just created because you asked them that question? The PNU factors answer that. So I'm going to go over real quick what the PNU factors are. Now, I'm reading this off, it's basically the same on both documents. I'm reading this off of the original guidance that was put out on March 5th of 2024, largely for the purpose of I'm going to give the examples that they give as well so that you can understand a little bit of how this is changing. The first PNU factor is conception. Each named inventor must contribute in some significant manner to the conception or reduction to practice of the claimed invention. So each person must have actually had a significant input on the conception, which conception has a more strict definition than what you might colloquially determine. Let me go here. From the new guidance, conception is the formation in the mind of the inventor of a definite and permanent idea of the complete and operative invention as it is hereafter to be applied in practice. Conception is complete when the inventor has a specific settled idea, a particular solution to the problem at hand, not just a general goal or research plan. So that's important to note here because conception is not determined based off of I have an idea, I want to solve a problem. I want to create a device that has that generates infinite food for everybody in the world, and I plan on researching that. No, conception comes when you have a solution to that, when you actually have a path that you're going to go down. So you can't patent or claim a right to a patent because you said, I really want to solve world hunger and I don't want to make a device that does that. You actually have to kind of understand how you're doing that and how the device is going to work and how to actually apply that device before you can be considered to have a play in conception of that. And to go into more factors of the way the previous guidance said, each named inventor must have significantly contributed to the definite and permanent idea of the complete and operative invention as it thereafter applied in practice. Conception analysis focuses on the natural person contribution, so AI doesn't count as that. Reduction to practice of an invention conceived by another is not enough to concept or constitute inventorship. So effectively, if you are just the person that helped actualize it, but you didn't have any part of the conception of it, then that is not enough to claim inventorship. Reference to reduction to practice in the first PNF factor is simply an acknowledgement of the doctrine of simultaneous conception and reduction to practice, which is sometimes pertinent in unpredictable arts. The second PNU factor, quality of contributions. Each named inventor must make a contribution to the claimed invention that is not insignificant in quality when that contribution is measured against the dimension of the full invention. And this is kind of where the AI part comes in. But what that is essentially saying is every inventor must actually have done something, and that something cannot be like an insignificant something. So say I used to work in I used to work in both a regenerative medicine lab and then later in a conservation biology lab. Me being in that lab is not a significant contribution. If the primary investigator, the professor that I was working under in that lab says, "Hey, Zach, I need you to wash out these beakers. I'm going to be using them for the experiment that I'm designing to make this invention." I have not significantly contributed to it. If I did a coffee run for the people that are inventing it, I did not significantly contribute to it. You actually have to have done something measurable and significant to the creation of the invention. You couldn't just be there and have helped out a little bit. The amount of effort and the amount of contribution you applied has to be significant. I've said significant contribution like 7 times on this, but I hope that example makes it a little bit better. But the example they give, because this is specifically related to AI, for example, providing routine or expected inputs to an AI system could be an exercise of normal skill expected of one skilled in the art that is considered insignificant in quality. So in this case, if, like, say you're a lab assistant and you're skilled in the art, but the contributions you are making are just taking data and putting it into AI and allowing the AI to analyze that data, that is not significant. You have not contributed. You have just you did data entry essentially. Um, so you have to have a more significant input than just merely entering something into AI. Even if entering that something into AI is something that knowing the internet was something that would be required of someone that's skilled of the art. Uh, this is something I also wonder how is going to affect this guidance, how it's going to affect the ability to copyright or trademark AI art, because you can easily say that entering a prompt into an AI art thing is not a significant contribution to, like, an AI art generator is not a significant contribution to the production of that art. So if they take the patent law and the way the patent guidance is being applied and apply it to copyright and trademark, in reality, AI generated art would not be considered copyrightable, because by this very guidance here, it would be considered insignificant in quality. The contribution would be considered insignificant in quality. But patent law and copyright law are different. So, like, I don't even know if that applied to it. The third Panu factor: an inventor must do more than merely explain to the real inventor well-known concepts and or the current state of the art. For example, experts whom the inventor consulted to discuss current state of the art, but who themselves were not involved in the invention creation process, would likely not satisfy this factor. So, like I said earlier, if you are inventing a thing, if you were trying to create a thing, I want to create a machine that produces infinite food for everybody. And I reach out to a nutritionist and say, hey, what sorts of minerals and vitamins and nutrients would food need to have for it to be able to solve food insecurity, for it to be able to solve world hunger? Them giving me an answer to that does not mean they help contribute to the invention of this. Me reaching out to someone and saying, "Hey, I need to know the laws of thermodynamics because matter cannot be created or destroyed, only altered." Them answering the question of that, of whether or not matter can be created or destroyed, or whether or not this device is going to need some sort of material input, would not make them an inventor of this. The Panu factors basically solve whether or not you can claim inventorship. Easy day, cool. But the way the previous guidance seemed to go, now that you understand the Panu factors, the way the previous guidance seemed to go is that when an invention was created through the use of AI, through the use of AI assistance, even if the inventor was a single person, like Zachary, says, I want to invent something, and then I start using ChatGPT to help me invent it. Because I use ChatGPT to help me invent it, from my understanding of the way the previous guidance was working, because I use ChatGPT or any other AI tool to help me invent it, I would have to have those Panu factors applied to me to determine whether or not I had a significant contribution. And in that case, I would have to have the Panu factors applied to me to see if I had a significant contribution to every single claim in the patent. And as if you watch my previous videos where I go over like the different Nintendo patents, you'll know some of those patents can have like 20 claims, 30 claims, 40 claims, 6,000 claims, and an excess number of claims. And the Panu factors would have to be applied for every single claim in order to determine whether or not it's patentable in a way, because if AI cannot be listed as a inventor, it's not a natural person. AI cannot be listed as an inventor, and if there is not a natural person that can be attributed to every single claim in the patent, those claims cannot be patented. So effectively, even single person inventions had to have the Panu factors applied to them to determine whether or not they're patentable. The new guidance effectively says, right here, actually in section 2, the Panu factors only apply when determining whether multiple natural persons qualify as joint inventors. Panu is inapplicable when only one natural person is involved in developing an invention with AI assistance, because AI systems are not persons and therefore cannot be joint inventors. So there is no joint inventorship question to analyze. This is effectively saying that if you used AI, why are we trying to determine whether or not that AI would be considered a joint inventor? Because that AI could never be a joint inventor to begin with. So why are the Panu factors being applied to every single claim to make sure that there's a natural person involved in every single claim? And it goes on to say, the touchstone of inventorship conception is the formation. I discussed this, the whole what conception is. Determining inventorship is highly fact intensive. The question is whether the natural person possessed knowledge of all the limitations of the claimed invention, such that is so clearly defined in the inventor's mind that only ordinary skill would be necessary to reduce the invention to practice without extensive research or experimentation. Analysis of conception turns on the ability of an inventor to describe an invention with particularity. Absent such a description, an inventor cannot objectively prove possession of a complete mental picture of the invention at a later time. So essentially, the thing that the inventor has to do in this situation is understand what they are inventing, and actually understand what they are inventing to such a degree that they know what it can do, what it can't do, and how to create it. And what this kind of does is it sets a difference here. From my understanding of this, what this kind of does is it sets a kind of hard line in the sand. And it goes in later, and it does actually say this. It's particularly in section 4, it says, as the case law establishes, inventors may use the services, ideas, and aid of others without those sources becoming co-inventors. And that AI systems are analogous to laboratory equipment, computer software, research databases, or any other tool that assists in the inventive process. So what this does is it sets a boundary. And it sets a boundary where you can use AI to help you create an invention. You can use AI to help you research an invention. You can use AI in the development of your invention, and that invention is still patentable. And we're not going to go ahead and apply these Panu factors if you're the only inventor to determine whether or not you had a significant contribution to it. But at the end of the day, you still have to know what you invented. You still have to have played a part in the invention and understand it. And what that means is, if we reach such a point where AI is so elaborate that I can type in, again, I'm going to go back to ending world hunger. I can type into ChatGPT, version 1700 or whatever, ChatGPT, make me an invention that will produce an endless amount of food with raw material input. And then it goes out and it invents the thing. It draws up the blueprints. It writes all the claims. It does everything. And then I submit that to the patent office, but I don't know how that thing works as the inventor, or even if there's multiple inventors, the joint group of inventors doesn't know really how that thing works. I can't claim it as an invention. But if I go to ChatGPT and put data into it, and I ask ChatGPT, hey, what nutritional values would the food output need to have in order to solve world hunger? And what sort of materials would I need to would be good, and how does electricity work, and blah blah blah. And I'm using ChatGPT or any other AI tool as essentially a research aid and a data processing aid. I can still claim that invention. Here's my thoughts on this. And if you watch a lot of my content, you understand probably like what my views on AIRR and our AI are, and you probably have an idea of what my thoughts on this are going to be. But here's my thoughts on the way this works, on the new guidance that's been put out. I don't have a problem with it. I do not have a problem with AI being used as a research tool or AI being used to help process data, because effectively all that is doing is lowering the barrier to entry in a way that is obtainable. All that is doing is expediting and expediting. What's expediting? It is making the process of doing the research faster. It is being able to, instead of, going to Google or going to a library and having to do 1,000 searches, and oh my god, like when I was in college, I had to take an entire class that was on how to do scientific research and determine whether or not a source was a good source to use and whether or not it was a valid source, or and looking at the methodology of research papers and shit like that to determine whether or not the methodology was good and whether or not you should use a source. I had to take an entire class on that. It is a pain. It is a pain. I've looked at grants that one of my professors in one of the labs I was working in had to write, and the sheer number of sources that they had to go through. This is when I was in the regenerative medicine lab. The sheer number of sources that they had to research and cite just to say we want to use 8 rats for this experiment instead of 6 because we need 8 rats and not 6 was insane. It's one of the things that slows down research, is one of the big things that slows down research, and like in the development of new practices and new methodologies and new devices, is the sheer amount of research that you have to do. You're in part just for the bureaucratic process of it. In that case, it was like, hey, you had to do enough research to determine that you're not using too many animal models when you could use less, kind of thing. But the research is a huge barrier to entry for all this. And all of the AI tools are doing is reducing that barrier of entry. It's not taking, it's lowering the amount of work an individual has to do that individual would be capable of doing, anyways, without like, effectively what I'm getting at is these are all things that someone could do, and it's just making it a little bit faster. And that's been going on forever. That has been going on for such a long time. The existence of libraries is a tool that lowered the amount of time that it would take to do research, because before then you would probably have to go out and write letters to I'm going to write a letter to Socrates and ask, hey, can you explain this to me? I'm going to write a letter to Archimedes, and can you explain this to me? I'm going to write a letter to Isaac Newton, can you explain this to me? And blah blah blah, and all this different stuff. And now you can have the invention of libraries, the creation of libraries, the creation of stored places where knowledge is stored in books, allowed a person to go to these libraries and find the information out themselves in a much quicker way. And then the invention of the Dewey Decimal System made those libraries a lot easier to look into and to search and to find information. It categorized the information, allowed you to find it. And then eventually we get to the point where, like, okay, now we have Google, and Google allows you to do the search. And now instead of having to go to a library and individually search it, you can go to your computer at home and individually search this thing. You're still doing the research, you're still to figure out, but you can do it. And then the invention of Wikipedia. I'm pretty sure Wikipedia came up after Google. So then, okay, let's look at Wikipedia. Wikipedia, I relate the use of AI to do research on something similar to like the use of Wikipedia, because you can't trust the AI. But like Wikipedia came out and it became a conglomeration for a bunch of people already did this research on this topic, and now they're describing it to you, they're explaining the research to you, and they cite their sources at the bottom. AI, or at least using ChatGPT and Google AI to do research like that, is in my mind almost just an advancement on, it's the next step past Wikipedia, right? It's basically just, now instead of going to Wikipedia to look up a thing and then Like, and then you have to find the specific web page that relates to it, and you might have to find 3 or 4 or 5 web pages to get the entire concept, the different topics to find the concept. Now you can type into ChatGPT or in Google and use Google AI, and it's going to scour the internet, and it's gonna provide you a lot of sources. But I relate it to the use of Wikipedia because you can't trust AI to give you a good answer. But if that AI gives you an answer and then cites the sources, then you can go to those sources and find it yourself. But it makes the research process that much faster and that much easier. It's just a tool that makes things faster. It's a tool that makes you able to do something that you had already been able to do, but do it faster. Now that said, cite your sources. If you're going to write a paper, you're going to invent something, you're going to do whatever, and you're going to use ChatGPT or Google AI to help you do the research. And just because like the Google AI puts out its own unique kind of thing out, cite the sources that it came from. Give accreditation, give credit to the people that did the initial work and blah blah blah. Like if you one, you have to in a lot of cases, but two, just on a moral ground, understand that you typing into ChatGPT or Google to ask a question to ChatGPT or Google, and it props out a response using AI, you didn't discover that. Someone else discovered it, and Google or ChatGPT just found their answer and then provided you with their answer, maybe with a conglomeration of a bunch of other people's answers too. So cite your sources. But ultimately, I don't have a problem with this. And I think this guidance is really good. One, because it sets that clear boundary. And from just talking to some of the lawyers I've talked to about patent law and doing research and stuff, a lot of times there's not a clear boundary. A lot of times it's very hard. And this guidance still does say things need to be measured on a case by case basis. But it sets that clear boundary of, okay, as long as you have made a significant contribution, as long as you understand what you're doing, then you can use this tool, and it is just a tool. It also clearly states that AI cannot be an inventor of something, and I like that. I like the fact that it states that AI can't be an inventor of something because that means the day won't come when someone can just type in invent unlimited food machine into a significantly advanced AI, get an unlimited food machine, and then patent the unlimited food machine. When it comes to medicine, someone won't be able to just put into an AI system or some sort of whatever comes of the future of AI system and say, "Hey, cure cancer for me." It pops out a cure for cancer, and now this asshole's curing cancer. Uh, but or this curing cancer is good. Now this asshole has a patent on the cure for cancer and can hold that back. It is stopping cancer from being cured. That's what I was trying to get at. That was a misspeak. I did, yeah. Now this asshole's whatever. But I actually think this is a really good step, and I think this is very applicable. I saw something. The thing I was looking for earlier that I wasn't able to find is I can see ways that this can be applied to some of the like Nintendo patents because the fact that it gives specific guidance on you know whether or not something is patentable, and some of that can be applied to the Nintendo patents, and some of it can be applied to AI generated art and a lot of other AI generated things if it ends up being in a way that can be applied to that, or at least provides a precedent that lawyers can argue about. So I find that interesting. But with that, I'm going to end this here. That I actually went on talking for a lot longer than I thought I was going to uh, about this. But I'm going to end this here. Please, if you reach this far, hype the video, comment, like, share. Do every bit of engagement helps the video do a lot better. Shout out to BoxWizard52. He's my only tier 3 member right now. The memberships really help out. The memberships, 100% of the funding from the membership goes straight to my editor until it reaches such a point that I can afford to hire him on full time because that'll allow me to put out more content faster, better, more researched. If you want to hear about the time I got pepper sprayed or any of the other stories, click the playlist over there. And if you're interested in contributing to my fight against patent trolling, consider donating to my GoFundMe, where I'm going to be building a database of prior art to be used by the USPTO and by law firms and indie companies to help protect themselves from patent trolling cases by providing a repository of all the prior art that exists for a bunch of different video game mechanics and other sort of creative mechanics and processes that just as a way to help fight against patent trolling. But please consider donating to that as well. With that, goodbye. Thank you. happy Thanksgiving. It's literally Thanksgiving when I'm recording this. I saw this. I had to do it. I didn't go home for Thanksgiving this year for a variety of reasons, but yeah. Bye.